Hello guys, my name is Mike, welcome back to the YouTube channel, and today we're checking out the operations room, the first time on this channel, and we're checking out the Beaufighter raid that embarrassed the Third Reich. Hope you enjoy. Yeah, so the Beaufighter raid that embarrassed the Third Reich, so I saw this in my YouTube recommendations, I thought I might check out. I absolutely adore kind of aviation history, and particularly that of the RAF, given that I've been to the Imperial War Museum Duxford a huge number of times. I've been to a number of air shows. My grandfather himself, as I've already said, was in the Royal Air Force during the Second World War as well. So I absolutely am fascinated with aircraft and aviation kind of history. And this Beaufighter raid that embarrassed the Third Reich, I assume from the title that this might be Operation Squabble, flying into the heart of kind of occupied Europe. But we'll see where it is. This is my first time checking out this channel as well. The link will be in the description as always. Auto-generated captions, so they could be dodgy. If they're dodgy, I'll turn them off. And let's see where this takes us.
Flight Lieutenant Alfred Ken Gatward and Navigator Sergeant George Fern take off from RAF Thorney Island in their Bristol Beaufighter. Their single aircraft mission is to pull off an outrageous publicity stunt over German-occupied Paris, to raise French morale and to display to the Germans that no matter where or when, nobody is safe from single aircraft nuisance attacks against the Reich. It's 1942, and France has been occupied by the Third Reich for 2 years now. The British Special Operations Executive, SOE, Intelligence Forces, report that every day between 12:15 and 12:45, German troops marched down the Champs-Élysées, the famous avenue in Paris between the Arc de Triomphe and the Place de la Concorde. The daily marches are intended to demonstrate military dominance over the locals, and the route concludes at the Arc, where the tomb of the unknown soldier lies, a deliberate and blatant insult to France.
But yeah, so the kind of the Special Operations Executive. So think of these as the predecessors to the MI5, the MI6. You know, these are the people that James Bond was kind of based upon in the books and things like this, because these are intelligence gatherers, these are spies, these are people both of British and of kind of foreign bodies who are all kind of collecting information, gathering reports on the movements of troops, you know, where things are going, what's the situation like. And essentially, obviously, they've been recording this about the Germans' tendency to do this down the Champs-Élysées. And yeah, it is utterly disrespectful, not just marching down the Champs-Élysées itself, you know, this kind of supposed sign of, you know, kind of French triumphalism and things like this, and yet the Germans are the ones using it. But particularly as well going to the tomb of the unknown soldier, which is our ultimate mark of disrespect. You know, it's not just disrespecting the country, but it's disrespecting all of those that have essentially died in it, particularly in the First World War, which is still heavy in the minds of the people that are living there, not just French, but, you know, just everyone who was involved in that conflict. And particularly as well within England as well, you have the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is the only tomb in in Westminster Abbey even, that nobody can walk on. But yeah, so that's just an interesting little tidbit.
Quiet but furious Frenchmen observe the arrogant regularity with which the marches are conducted and decide something should be done about it. They contact and tip off the British SOE. At this point in the war, there isn't much reason for optimism. All of Europe is under German domination, and the Wehrmacht is now successfully pushing east into the Soviet Union. The Air Ministry decides to give the French people a much-needed boost. Fighter Command Spitfires don't have the range to go to Paris, and their night fighter variant Beaufighters carry sophisticated and sensitive night fighting equipment that can't be risked falling for the Germans if the aircraft had to crash land. Coastal Commands stand up to the task and volunteer their multi-role Beaufighters as a suitable aircraft. The plan is to score a major propaganda coup by flying up the Champs-Élysées at low level, strafing parading German soldiers with cannon fire up the full length of the 1-mile avenue. At the same time in the Pacific, the Doolittle raid has demonstrated the powerful morale boost that could be achieved by hitting the enemy back where they think they're safe, even if minimal military value has been gained from the raid.
Yeah, so it's good that he brings up the Doolittle raid with the kind of the insignificant. The Doolittle raid carried out hardly any damage, and yet it was a major kind of propaganda coup because it gave Americans hope. You know, like they had been hit hard in Pearl Harbor and stuff like this, and the Japanese are kind of rampaging through the Pacific, and yet it gave that kind of the American morale that you know we we've taken a punch, but we can take one back, or we can give one back. And it's similar here as well, I suppose, not just for the French, but also to an extent the British, because as I said, 1942, things aren't looking great. I mean, as they said, Operation Barbarossa's in full swing, France is occupied, things aren't looking great. Obviously, 1942, in my opinion, is the year in which the war begins to turn. Obviously, you have Stalingrad, you have the British basically pushing the Italians and the Germans all the way out of North Africa. So, you have that situation going on. But for the French people in Paris, living occupied for years, they must think, this is life now. This is reality. And so the ability to remind them that, it's not over. That, this war is far from over. There's still fight left in the rest of the free world. And almost, I suppose, to an extent, to remind them that they're not alone. Although it was insignificant, as we will see, it is not it didn't carry out that great of a deal. For the French morale itself, it must have been quite heartening to just get recognition that, they haven't just been abandoned, but they're still very much part of a wider war.
Flight Lieutenant Gatward is offered the mission. The 27-year-old had flown Blenheims against the advancing German army during the Battle of France and the evacuations at Dunkirk, a job with a bleak survival rate. He's told the Paris raid will be dangerous. He accepts straight away. The Beaufighter is a versatile multi-role heavy fighter. It achieves great success at anti-ship operations in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, pounding Axis merchant shipping, submarines and warships with its 4 20mm cannons, bombs, rockets and torpedoes. During the defence of Malta in 1941, the Beaufighter proves itself as a fighter, scoring 49 kills with a further 42 damaged. During the Western Desert Campaign, the mighty Beau shows its worth at close air support, strafing and rocketing enemy ground positions. Australian Beaufighters show their worth against the Japanese in the Pacific, gaining the nickname the Whispering Death. A true all-rounder with fearsome firepower, the Beaufighter is the aircraft for the Paris mission.
Yeah, and again, it's something that I like to mention. Is obviously people, when you talk about RAF aircraft of the Second World War, the main two that people kind of drift towards is both the Avro Lancaster and the Supermarine Spitfire. And now I absolutely adore both of those planes, particularly as well. My grandfather flew in Lancasters as a tail gunner, as I've previously mentioned. And obviously, Supermarine, Rolls-Royce engine, what's not to love? But obviously, you had a number of other planes that carried out huge vital roles. So obviously the Hurricane was probably the fighter of the British during the Second World War. That done most of the damage in the Battle of Britain was through Hurricanes. You had, like the Beaufighter, as I said, this multi-role purpose fighter that carried out a whole, it could be basically a jack of all trades regardless of what it needed to be. It could be an interceptor, it could be a ground fighter, it could be a night fighter, it could be a anti-shipping plane, it could be a whole measure of different things. And as well, another plane as well was like the de Havilland Mosquito, made out of wood, and it was that was kind of got the nickname of the workhorse of the RAF, a wooden framed fighter. And yet it was amazing what it's done. The university I went to as well contained engines and things like this, parts of it all around the campus of various different aircraft that it built there. And so, it wasn't just the Supermarine Spitfires and the Avro Lancasters during the war, but, the Beaufighter had its own role to play.
4 times Gatward and Fern attempt the mission, but each time weather closes in and they abort. On the 12th of June 1942, the 5th attempt, there is still low cloud and rain over Paris, but Gatward's patience has run out. They're going to do it this time, whatever the weather. After a short 29-minute flight, they hurtle towards the outskirts of Paris at 30 feet above the ground to avoid radar detection. Flying so low, they suddenly tear into a flock of crows, and one becomes lodged inside the starboard engine. The Hercules radial engine is tough, and continues to drive the Beaufighter as they bank around the Eiffel Tower. Unfortunately, the Germans are not on the Champs-Élysées at their usual time, and the crew find it empty. They have a surprise waiting for the locals. As Gatward manoeuvres the bow down into the avenue below rooftop level, Fern drops a French national flag, the tricolour, from the aircraft. An iron weight causes the flag to unravel and fly in full glory below them, and they spot men, women and children smiling and waving back. It flutters to the ground and lands on the tomb of the unknown soldier. At the end of the avenue lies the German High Command building. Ensuring there are no civilians nearby, Gatward banks towards and unleashes a volley of 20mm cannon fire into the building. They bank hard right and drop a second tricolour over the Place de la Concorde. They somehow evade enemy fighter attention and eventually make it back, returning this time to RAF Northolt in London. Gatward's logbook entry understatedly reads, Paris, no cover, 0 feet. Drop tricolour on Arc de Triomphe and Ministry Marine. Shoot up German HQ, little flak. The Parisians are heartened and grateful to the airmen for the symbolic act, and the French resistance receive a well-earned morale boost. The French crow is buried at RAF Northolt.
So they even buried the crow. But yeah, you know, as I said earlier, it's the important thing there is that although it was relatively kind of, you know, it didn't really change the war. It didn't deal a decisive blow to the Germans or anything like that. What it did do was it allowed the French to dream or have hope that, you know, they're not alone, or remind them that they're not alone, and particularly the French resistance who, you know, might be wavering and things like this. Something like this as well could be a huge boost, not just to the morale, but to the numbers. You know, you have these regular, everyday people who are sick and tired of seeing the Germans march up and down their city, particularly stopping at the tomb of the unknown soldier and things like this. You know, this utter disrespect, and suddenly this happens, and you're thinking, well, maybe there is a way that I can help. Maybe there is a way that I can fight back. You know, and it leads to this type of situation, and particularly as well the pilot. I mean, understated, cool as a cucumber is, it isn't doing him justice. You know, 0 feet flying at, you know, and the fact that they was able to evade fighter and flak as well is all the more achievement as well. And it's just a reminder that perhaps, you know, you don't need the necessary decisive victories in war or something like that to make a difference. Sometimes it is just giving a group of people some sort of hope. And that's what I believe that they did, similar to the Doolittle raid in the Pacific. But that was a bit of a shorter video. I hope you've enjoyed, and hopefully you've learned. The link to this video will be in the description. As always, if you have any recommendations, then please link them below in the description, in the comments. But otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.